You own one thing you can never sell. You cannot fold it into a suitcase. You cannot wire it across an ocean. It took you 40 years to build, and you do not notice it is there until the day it is gone. It is a map, a quiet map inside your head of how your own country works. Which pharmacy stays open past midnight? Who to call the night the heat dies in January? Which neighbor still keeps your spare key? That map is the most valuable thing a retired person owns. Almost nobody ever talks about it. Here is what gets said even less. You can lose that map without ever leaving home. Right now, close to half the country has thought about it. Seriously. About spending their final decades somewhere other than where they were born. Not a vacation, not a winter away, a permanent exit. That number is real, and it is not shrinking. But the story everyone tells about it is the wrong story. They talk about the ones who go. Cheap rent, warm beaches, a pool for $500 a month. Almost no one talks about what is happening underneath. Millions of people never buy a single plane ticket. And a country they spent a lifetime memorizing is quietly walking away from them anyway. Staying still has started to feel a lot like leaving. Once you see why, you cannot unsee it. For most of the last century, growing old here had a shape you could count on. You worked 30 years, maybe 40. You chipped away at a mortgage until the house was finally yours. Or close. You saved what you could. Never enough to feel rich. Just enough to stop doing math at the kitchen table on the last night of the month. Then the work ended, and you stepped into something steady, not luxury. Solid ground, room to breathe. That was the arrangement. Unwritten, unspoken, but are quite dust, real. People did not just believe in it. They built whole lives on top of it. The job they took, the town they chose, the corner they bought a house on. Every choice quietly assumed the deal would hold. Then the deal changed. No announcement. No letter. No headline. Nobody stood up and admitted the terms were different now. It changed the way slow water wears away stone. Quietly, while everyone was busy living inside it. By the time people looked up, the ground had already shifted, and they were too far in to start over. You cannot unretire. You cannot rewind 3 decades of choices. So they did the only thing left. They adjusted, and they kept it quiet, because saying it aloud felt like admitting they had done everything right and still lost. That part matters more than any number I am about to give you. These people are not reckless. They did not torch their savings on nonsense. They are the rule followers. They paid in year after year, exactly as they were told. And the system did not reward them for it. That is the wound under all of this. It is not poverty. It is betrayal. So let us look at the math. The math is where the silence starts to make sense. A typical retired household spends around $5,000 a month just to keep the lights on and the fridge full. The Social Security check meant to cover it averages about $2,000 a month. Hold those side by side. One is $5,000. The other is $2,000. The gap is $3,000 every month. Not once. Not in a bad year. Every single month. That gap does not vanish because you ignore it. It comes from somewhere. From savings, if any are left. From a part-time job, if a body in its 70s can take the shift. From a grown child quietly covering a bill. Usually from some uneasy mix of all three. And for most people, the gap is not closing. It is widening. A little more each year, like a crack creeping across a ceiling. Then there is rent. Rent deserves its own moment. Across most of the country, a bare apartment will cost you $1,500 a month. In a lot of cities, more. Hold that beside a $2,000 check and the trouble is obvious right away. Housing alone swallows about 3/4 of what comes in before a single other bill is touched. And that is the gentle version. Try Miami. Try Austin. Try San Francisco. There, a plain one-bedroom does not pressure the budget. It devours the whole thing and comes back hungry. Now, stack the rest on top. Groceries that cost more than last year. A prescription that refuses to get cheaper. A power bill in August. A copay that crept up again while you were not looking. Run the numbers honestly. You land where those households land. Does not add up. It has not added up for a long time. And millions of people are not reading about this in an article. They are living inside it. At the kitchen table. On the last night of the month. Stretching 2,000 over 5,000 of life. Here is what makes this different from almost every economic story you have heard. It is invisible. There is no crash to point at. No line around the building. No crowd in the street with signs. A crisis you can see at least gets a name and a news segment. This one gets neither. It happened behind closed doors, all over the country. One small private decision at a time. It looks like putting off the dentist one more year. It looks like buying the store brand of everything. Every time. It looks like canceling the specialist, because the specialist costs money already promised to the power company. It looks like standing in a pharmacy, doing math, choosing between the medication and the electric bill. Because this month there is no room for both. None of that makes a sound. So none of it gets counted. And for a growing number, the quiet adjustment is bigger. They go back to work. Walk into almost any large store. Look at who is running the register. Look at who is restocking the far end of an aisle. People in their late 60s on their feet through a full shift. People well into their 70s working jobs that were meant to be 15 years behind them. We like to tell a flattering story about that. Staying active. Staying engaged. Keeping the mind sharp. For a few of them, fair enough. For most, it is not a lifestyle. It is arithmetic in a vest and a name tag. The pension was not enough. Or there never was a pension. The savings ran dry faster than the spreadsheet swore they would. So they clock back in, at the exact age they were promised they could finally clock out. But money is only half of it, and it is the half people will talk about. Under the dollars runs something quieter, something heavier, something that almost never reaches a conversation. The slow vanishing of everything that made staying put feel safe. The neighborhood, the friends who had known your face for 30 years, the family who once lived close enough to swing by on a random Wednesday. That web held a life in place. For a lot of people, it has quietly come undone. The kids took better jobs in other states. The old friends passed or just drifted the way people do. The street looks identical. Same houses, same trees, with the feeling that used to live there has left. That is the moment the dangerous thought arrives. Money pressure and loneliness landing together. At the one age, a person needs steadiness and belonging the most. A question slips into the back of the mind. So quiet you are half afraid to say it out loud. If staying here means I can no longer afford to grow old at all, then what if I simply stop trying to? Once that question is in your head, it does not leave. And the internet is very good at keeping it alive. So you start seeing the videos. A retired nurse walking you through her apartment in Thailand, a place with a pool, for $500 a month. A former teacher in Lisbon describing her mornings. She walks to the market. She eats well. She sits in a cafe. And in years, she has not opened a single gut-dropping medical bill. Those videos are not staged. No actors, no set. They are showing something that genuinely exists. So let us walk through what genuinely exists. And the place is pulling the most attention, with real ground-level figures, not the dream-shaped ones. Start with Mexico. Cities like Puerto Vallarta, San Miguel de Allende, Mérida. A comfortable 2-bedroom in a pleasant district, somewhere between $600 and $1,000 a month. Sit down for a proper meal nearby and the bill might be $2 to $5. In the expat communities, English is common. The same American grocery chains you already shop run down the street, and the time zones often line up cleanly with wherever your family sits. To an American on a social security check, Mexico barely registers as foreign. It is the texture of the American Southwest, only with the price tags rolled way back. Here, the dollar finally buys a real life again. Thailand runs a different kind of math. Over in Chiang Mai, a furnished modern place rents for under $500 a month. See a doctor at a good private hospital. The visit itself lands around $15 to $30. A procedure that runs tens of thousands in the States. Here, a tiny fraction of that. Often in hospitals built specifically for patients from overseas. People spend years bracing every time a medical envelope lands. Then they walk out of a Thai hospital feeling something they had nearly forgotten. Relief. The plain, uncomplicated kind they had stopped believing in. Portugal sells something else. It does not match Southeast Asian prices. And almost anyone who moved there will tell you straight. Money was never the reason. What Portugal offers is ease. Streets that feel safe. Systems that simply work. A daily rhythm that does not feel like giving anything up. It feels more like getting something back. Something you had not noticed was missing. The country has poured years into visa routes built to make older arrivals feel wanted. Vietnam is the newer name. Da Nang, Ho Chi Minh City. Rock bottom costs, next infrastructure racing to catch up. And a kind of momentum that strikes a lot of Americans as electric. After years of watching their own hometowns slow to a crawl, people arrive planning to stay 6 months. 3 years on, they are still there, no longer quite sure when the trial run turned into a life. And then there is Japan. Japan stops nearly everyone cold the first time it comes up. And Japan is not a cheap country, not by a long way. The language gap is wide and real. And yet year after year, Japan ranks high among Americans drawing Social Security overseas. Let that land. It tells you something the rent figures cannot. This is not only about chasing the lowest number. For a real and growing group, what they want is not cheap. It is functional. Streets that are clean and stay clean. Trains that arrive when the board says they will. A society wired around quiet consideration, not constant low-grade friction. Some are worn down by years of basic things failing at home. For them, a system that simply works beats any discount. So these countries are not competing on price alone. They're competing on the texture of an ordinary day. And right now, for one particular generation of older Americans, America is quietly losing that contest. In a way, the official figures barely register. Before we go further, I am curious. Has anyone in your life seriously talked about growing old somewhere else? Tell me in the comments. It is more common than most people realize. And the ones quietly turning it over are usually surprised how many others are too. Here is what those videos always leave out. Picture a woman who ran a school for 35 years. Careful with money her whole life. The kind who balanced a checkbook to the penny. She settles in Portugal at 68, ready for something gentler. And for 3 years, it is everything the brochure promised. She walks farther in a week than she had in years. The financial dread she carried for so long lifts clean off her shoulders. She lingers over coffee in the open air, and she feels something she had almost stopped feeling, that she is not running from anything anymore. Then the 4th year arrives. Her oldest friend back home gets a frightening diagnosis. Getting back to that bedside means months of planning. It means the real bodily toll of a long flight over an ocean, on a body in his late 60s, landing somewhere that already feels a half step less familiar. Our children are scattered across states, all of them busy, all in different time zones. The day her granddaughter takes those first wobbling steps, she is not in the room. She watches it on a phone screen, alone in a silent apartment, 4,000 miles from where it happened. She is not miserable. By most honest measures, her life is still good. But something settles in. A feeling she cannot quite name. It is not exactly grief. It is closer to a quiet recognition. She does not fully belong to the country she lives in now, and she no longer fully belongs to the one she left. She is suspended between the two, and that space has no name and no address. This is not one woman's story. It surfaces constantly among people who left, shared quietly, a little carefully. The way you admit something you did not mean to. You go for a few years. Then you turn to look back, and the web that once held you in place has come apart. The people you knew drifted off. Some died. Some just carried on with their own lives while you were gone. The neighborhood did not pause and wait. The city did not preserve itself in amber. And the truth is, neither did you. The more time you spend away, the more that earlier life blurs. It turns into something that feels less like a place and more like an old photograph. And almost everyone makes the same silent bet. They build something new, somewhere far off, while quietly believing the old life is still sitting there, waiting for whenever they return. It is only when they turn to check that they understand. It is not. That is the part nobody warned them about. And it is real. It matters. But hold on to one thing, because here is the turn that changes the entire picture. That exact loss. The web dissolving. The old life thinning into memory. The feeling of belonging nowhere. It does not only happen to the people who leave. So far we have talked about the emotional weight. That weight is real. But there is a second layer most people never see coming, and it is almost aggressively unglamorous. It is paperwork. Bureaucracy. The kind of thing that drops on you like a wall you never knew was there. Most Americans assume that leaving the country means leaving the tax system. Out of the country, out from under it. Reasonable assumption. It is also wrong. Out of every country on the planet, only 2 tax their people by passport, not by where they live. America is one of the 2. Read that again, because of how strange it is. Your location is irrelevant. So is the number of years since you left. So is whether you ever plan to set foot here again. Washington still wants a federal return out of you every year you hold that passport. Even when you owe nothing. Even if every dollar you earned came from another country. The obligation does not retire when you do. It follows you across the water. And that is just the opening move. Past that annual filing set extra reporting duty. Most people overseas only learn of them after they have already tripped over one. Let a foreign account climb past $10,000 at any moment in the year. Even for a day. Now you owe a separate report to the Treasury Department. Miss it, and the penalties can be brutal. Even when the slip was completely innocent. Even when you had no idea the rule existed. Then comes the part that genuinely stuns people. Plenty of banks overseas would simply rather not deal with Americans. The compliance burden that American rules dump on any overseas bank holding a citizen's account is heavy. Heavy enough that, in many popular destinations, banks have simply decided the trouble is not worth it. People arrive, sign a lease, unpack the boxes, only to find that opening a simple bank account turns into a real ordeal. And it runs the other direction too. Stateside, certain institutions turn cool toward the customers who pack up and go. Real cases exist of accounts quietly closed, sometimes on barely any notice. The moment a mailing address switched to a foreign one. Certain brokerage firms will not let you keep a retirement account open with a non-American address. The financial system you fed for 40 straight years can start closing its doors the instant you step outside them. Most people untangle all of it eventually. Millions have. But the gap between the sunlit videos and the real paperwork on the ground is wide. People who are sure they were buying simplicity find something else. A new and unfamiliar kind of complexity. Same headaches. Better weather. The paperwork in the end is solvable. Annoying. Slow. But solvable. Healthcare sits in a different category entirely. This is the one that keeps people awake in the small hours. Medicare does not cross the border with you. With very narrow exceptions, it pays only for care inside the United States. Make your real home somewhere else. And you step outside a safety net you paid into your whole working life. Not reduced coverage. Not half coverage. None at all. In Thailand and Mexico, the private care is genuinely affordable. Often excellent. Doctors who trained well. Up-to-date facilities. Proper international accreditation. Plenty of Americans abroad pay less for better treatment than they did at home. But cover a 70-year-old who already has health problems and the premiums climb steeply. And whatever you buy comes with limits that bite. And money is only half the story. Picture the other piece. You are 74. It is the middle of the night. You are in a hospital, in a country whose language your mind does not run on. Every sign, every form, every voice, something your brain has to translate. You are fighting to get your symptoms across, and your medical history, and the one drug that could kill you, through broken fragments of a language, through your hands, through an app that keeps garbling whatever you type. The staff are kind. They are trying. The clock keeps moving anyway. The treatment might be excellent. The night can still be terrifying. In a way, no cheerful video, watched from your couch back home, could prepare you for. And it does not end at one bad night. Health early in retirement and health late in retirement are two different animals. The cheerful videos get filmed by people who are still healthy, still steady on their feet. Far fewer get filmed in the years after that. When mobility starts to fail, when care turns constant instead of occasional, when the language barrier stops being an inconvenience and becomes the wall between you and a nurse who understands what is wrong. There is a quiet, particular exposure in growing old somewhere that was never yours. Most people only feel the full weight of it once they are already inside it. Never before. If this is sharpening the picture for you, one quick thing helps the next person find it. Tap the like. It honestly matters for who this reaches. Now hold all of it in your head, because we are about to ask the question that runs under everything. You know it all now. The taxes that chase you across the sea, the banks that shut their doors, the Medicare that dies at the water's edge, the slow drift away from everyone you love. So why do this many still want out? Why does the poll survive even in people who see exactly how messy it gets? The answer sits in the space between two numbers. 44% of Americans have seriously thought about retiring somewhere else. Fewer than 700,000 are actually doing it. That is less than 1% of everyone on Social Security. The dream is enormous. The doing is rare, and the chasm between those two numbers is not about confusion. It is not about missing facts. It is made of the full weight of a real life landing on a real person. Selling the house. Untangling a tax situation in two countries at once. Learning how an entire new medical system works. Living with a language you only half speak. Every single day. Letting go of a community. Even one that had already half emptied years back. None of that is small. And under all of it sits something harder to name. The sheer pull of knowing exactly where you stand. Here is a thing almost nobody says plainly. Nobody truly retires to a country. They retire into a system. One they spent decades absorbing without ever realizing they were studying for a test. It is that map. The one from the very start of this. Which pharmacy stays open past midnight? Who would you call the night the furnace gives out? Which neighbor notices if the lights stay dark too long? How to walk into a doctor's office already knowing which questions to ask. Which form comes next. How the call with the insurance company will go. That whole invisible web of tiny, practical knowing. And you never think about it. Right up until it vanishes and suddenly you are building from nothing. Move halfway around the world and you surrender the whole thing overnight. Then you start again from scratch. A foreign language. A system you do not understand. A town where you know nearly no one. That is a particular flavor of exhaustion. And it is almost impossible to respect until you are living it. So most people do the arithmetic. They weigh what it truly costs to pull up every route this late in the game. And they stay. Not because it is easy. They stay because the hard they already carry is a hard they understand. People can carry a familiar difficulty far longer than they can face an unfamiliar one. Even when the unfamiliar one would, on paper, leave them better off. This is not a glitch in human nature. It is simply human nature. And it only sharpens with age. When the cost of getting one big decision wrong feels so much steeper than it used to. And then comes the one thing that shuts these conversations down faster than anything else. Family. An overseas retirement sounds perfectly sensible. Right up until you sit with one specific image. Being stuck on the far side of an ocean. On the day something breaks for someone you love. What was once a 40-minute drive becomes a frantic, last-minute flight across an ocean. At full fare. On a body that no longer bounces back. Or the image of arriving in a brand new country at 72. A bad knee slowing you down. Holding a Medicare card that goes dead the moment it crosses a border. For plenty of people, that one picture settles it. The conversation is over. Now look closely at why those people stay. Because there is something hidden inside it. They stay for the familiar system. The map. The knowing. They stay because the difficulty at home is the difficulty they already understand. And that logic is sound. Except for one quiet problem. The map is changing too. Listen to the people who never left. The ones who stayed put in the same town for 40 years. You hear the same sentence again and again. I do not recognize this country anymore. The houses are unchanged. But the life that filled the street has drained out of it. The neighbors are strangers. The prices belong to a different world than the one they planned for. The friends have passed or moved away. The whole texture of an ordinary day has shifted under them. And they never moved an inch. Sit with what that means. The exhausting part of leaving, the part everyone dreads, is turning into a stranger somewhere unfamiliar. But a great many are already strangers in a place that used to be theirs. They're paying the price of leaving without ever having left. The belonging is dissolving either way. The web is coming apart either way. The old life is thinning into memory either way. The only thing actually up for decision is the address where it happens to you. That is the part both the brochures and the warning videos miss. Both quietly assume the same thing. That staying means keeping the familiar. That leaving means losing it. But for a whole generation of older Americans, the familiar is leaving on its own. With or without their permission, which reframes the entire question. It was never stay safe versus go and risk it. It is and always was a quieter and stranger choice. Which unfamiliar country do you want to grow old inside? A foreign one, with cheaper rent and a language you will have to learn. Or this one, the one that no longer answers to the name you remember. So step all the way back. Look at the whole shape of it. The widening gap between income and the cost of an ordinary month. The slow erosion of community, at home and abroad alike. The hundreds of thousands who have already gone. The millions more at kitchen tables quietly running the figures. What you are watching is a generation reaching a conclusion. Without drama. Without any announcement. The secure old age their country kept promising them is no longer on offer. Not at a price their income can reach. For some of them, leaving is a genuine release. They find a standard of living they could never have pictured back in the grind. Real community. Money that finally stretches. A daily pace built for human beings, not for output. To them, it is not a downgrade. It is the upgrade they had stopped expecting. For others, the truth is messier. It is a practical fix for a broken structure, chosen under genuine pressure, carrying losses that never surface in any cost of living, tally. Distance from the people they love. Paperwork no one warned them about. A health question that hums in the back of the mind at night. A homeland that slowly, quietly stops feeling like one. They take the deal because the other option is worse. Going broke in a town that has already lost the closeness it once gave. Still, a trade is a trade. Nobody is calling it a windfall. And for the largest group of all, the choice does not arrive as courage. These are the ones who think hard, then stay. It arrives as a clear-eyed reckoning. The hardship they know is a hardship they can shoulder. The kids live too near to abandon without paying a terrible price. The grandkids deserve to be picked up and held, not waved at on a little glowing screen. And the prospect of arriving a stranger at 72, bad knee and all, carrying a Medicare card that goes dead the moment it leaves the country. That is more weight than they will agree to lift. So they stay. They adjust. They make the small cuts. Season after season. Until the retirement they actually live looks nothing like the promise. And everything like the budget. And here is the cruel part. The part this whole story keeps circling. Staying did not spare them the loss. It only changed where the loss came from. Which brings us back to the only question that really matters. It was never where should you go. It was always who are you? Because the same move that sets one person free will quietly break another. Some people are built to adapt. They can lose the old map and feel that loss as room, not ruin. They walk into a strange market in a strange land and feel curiosity, not dread. For them, leaving is oxygen. And some are stitched so tightly to their community. No cheaper rent or warmer weather could replace it. They would rather carry a familiar hardship among familiar faces than chase ease among strangers. For them, staying is the right answer. Even at a brutal price. Neither one is wrong. They are just different people. And the worst mistake is choosing as though you are the other kind. Because under all of it sits a promise. For generations, working people here were told something simple. Pay in. Save. Follow the rules they gave you. And when you are old, the country will keep a steady place waiting for you. Not rich. Not fancy. Just steady, dignified, and real. The figures today say the promise is unraveling. Not all the way. Not for everyone, but enough. Enough that hundreds of thousands have already made the decision with a one-way ticket. And millions more sit with the same arithmetic in their heads, waiting to see if it will ever come out right. The people boarding those flights are not making a political point. They are not fleeing a party or a flag. They are doing the oldest thing people do. When the place you live can no longer cover your basic needs, you go looking for one that can. And what that reveals about the country they walk away from is worth sitting with, even when the answer stings. The reasons it stays invisible are not comforting ones. There is nothing dramatic to point at. No marches, no banners. Just a quiet, relentless trickle of departures, one boarding pass at a time. And what we keep refusing to look at has a habit. It turns into what we can no longer avoid. So I will leave the question where it belongs. With you. The same one those millions are holding right now. Knowing what you know about the math, has it changed where you picture yourself growing old? Tell me below. And be honest. That is the only kind of answer worth anything here.